8:05 a.m. I clear my throat and grab the microphone.
Good morning and welcome to Charlie's, your local family department store. Today we have a sale on chopped liver. Go ask Gary over at the deli all about it.
I look over in the direction of the deli to see Gary violently chopping up said liver. I don't really know where he got it, though. He just told me to add it to the morning announcements.
We've also updated our holiday section, so all customers can find whatever they might want or need for Father's Day. To all customers currently shopping with us.
I glance over to the bench by the front door and see our only customer. If he can even still be considered a customer. Because he doesn't look like he has much life left in him. Did he just pull the skin on his feet up like socks?
We're sorry to inform you that our restrooms are currently out of order until further notice.
That's because, when I came in this morning, both the men's and women's restrooms were covered in blood. When I say covered, I mean floor to ceiling. Drenched and dripping. It's been happening for months now, and we have no idea how. It always happens during the closing hours. The camera always glitches when it happens, and no one is brave enough to stay overnight to figure out the source of it.
Have a nice day, and thank you for shopping at Charlie's Department Store.
I finish the first announcement of the day and let go of the microphone. As I do, I see Gabe speed walking into the front doors. He has a look of terror on his face, and he's breathing heavy. Must be out of its cage? I ask him. He slams his messenger bag down, and I can see rips and tears in it. Yeah, and apparently it only ever finds meat tasty for some stupid reason, he says, clearly frustrated that our unintentional pet Wendigo is a picky eater. I'll tell Gary to give it some other, less fortunate meat selections he might have. We need to get it back in its cage before we get a rush. Gabe's face contorts into one of disgust at this comment, but I'm not sure if it's at me discussing Gary's mystery meat selection, or at us getting busy. Or maybe it's at the thought of the Wendigo munching on his flesh. Who knows? I tell Gabe to begin setting up his register space while I go over to talk to Gary. When I walk over, I see Gary chopping up some very disgusting gray meat. Hey, Gary. You know the owners don't like it when you try to sell customers meat past its expiration date, I softly reminded him. Gary was usually a total sweetheart to all of our workers, but it still wasn't the best idea to make him mad. He grunted, then said, Gary, hear Wendigo out. Gary, help. He slammed his butcher's knife down on the counter, completely obliterating whatever bone was in the mystery meat. Great job, Gare Bear. Always ahead of the game. I tapped the counter twice before turning around and walking back towards the front of the store, passing the bathroom where I could see Cheryl mopping blood off the tiles. I could have sworn I saw her lick some excess blood she'd acquired on her fingers, but I try not to look too deep into things like that around here. However, I did notice and call out her failure to post an out-of-order sign on the door, to which her response was, Oh, is the restroom out of order? Once I handled that situation, I passed the earlier mentioned customer, a 7-foot-tall man whose skin never seemed to fit him properly, and we greeted each other. He had to close his jaw using his hand after the greeting, but I tried not to stare, because that'd be rude of me. Just a usual morning here at Charlie's. 1:43 p.m. Sir? Said the young girl who just walked up to me. She looked college age and absolutely normal, so she really shouldn't have been in here. I stood up from the shelf I was restocking and looked at her, waiting for her to state what she needed help with. There's these two little girls over there on the... She pointed over to a nearby aisle. That aisle? And they seem to be lost. They've been standing there at the end of the aisle for quite a while, but they don't seem to have a parent or anyone with them, said the girl nervously. She genuinely looked worried for their well-being, but it was her she should have been worried about. I nodded, then asked, Are they twins? She nodded back, confused that I didn't seem concerned. You already know about them? I ignored her question and asked one of my own. Did you respond whenever they asked you to play with them? I asked them where their mom was. Why do you not seem more worried? What if their mom abandoned them? She seemed to be getting somewhat flustered that I wasn't doing more. Ma'am, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you are now basically their mother. You spoke to them and acknowledged their presence, so now they're attached to you. She looked at me in complete bewilderment. Then it quickly changed to a look of fear. Probably from me, those girls, and this whole establishment. What are you even talking about? They said they wanted to play with you forever. You stupidly responded, even though you didn't know any better, and now they are yours. Which I'm very sorry about, but also can't do anything about. Are you crazy? Is everyone in the store crazy? Is that what's going on? What even is this place? She was starting to not take me seriously. She had a look on her face that reminded me of all the dumb blonde girls that used to bully me in high school. I was used to people looking at me in fear, thanks to Charlie's, but looking at me like I was stupid was another thing. I suddenly decided I didn't care much for her well-being anymore. I shrugged and told her the honest truth. It's a grocery store, but not for people like you. She inched away from me at this point, but she still asked, "What do you mean, people like me?" She was starting to sound like a Karen, but I could also see the fear come back in her eyes, betraying her tough act. Normal people. She stared at me for a few seconds in silence. I could see the gears turning in her head, looking for a response and unable to find one. The two twins walked up to each side of her, each taking one of her hands. Her left hand was occupied by a bag of sugar, which the twin taking over happily launched over her shoulder, making the bag bust with force. The force of the throw actually made some of the sugar turn to powder, so it looked like a freak snowfall had occurred. "Good luck," is all I said, albeit sarcastically, before the girls dragged her out of the grocery store. I could feel her eyes practically burning a hole in my skull. Clearly she did not get the memo about it being rude to stare, but she didn't say anything else, I'm assuming out of fear. I looked at the snowstorm the twins had caused and groaned, grabbing my walkie-talkie. "Hey Gabe, clean up on aisle..." I glanced up at the broken aisle sign above my head, then glanced at the broken one in surrounding aisles, and inwardly cursed myself for being unable to do basic math. "Whatever aisle looks like Frosty the Snowman just shit himself. Thanks." 5:07 p.m. I was restocking the magazine racks up front by the cash registers when a thought occurred to me. "Hey, have you seen Gabe in the last few hours?" I asked Cheryl begrudgingly. She paused her very difficult task of organizing a pack of M&Ms by color, and thought for a second. "I think he clocked out and left already. Schedule says he got off at 3. "I know that, but he's been missing since before 3, Cheryl." "Oh?" she replied, as she scrunched up her stupid face in confusion. "Aren't you colorblind?" She paused to look at me again. "Yes, I am. Why do you ask?" The thought of seeing if the Wendigo might be interested in a taste of Cheryl enters my mind, mere seconds before a messenger bag soars through the sliding glass doors and lands with a loud thud in front of the register. It's nearly ripped to shreds, but I can see one of those tourist keychains with the name Gabe on it, hanging from the somehow still intact arm strap. "That looks like his bag, doesn't it?" ponders Cheryl, making me literally want to rip her head off at that point. I stare at the bag for a few seconds, honestly angry that Gabe was gone and not her. "Oh wait." She swings the M&M's bag in her hand towards me in an effort to grab my attention, making 2 M&M's fly out and hit me on the cheek. "I remember Gabe went outside after he finished sweeping up the snowman. You didn't tell me Christmas decorations had come in." I slowly turned to look at her, completely confused as to how someone could be so stupid and oblivious, and grabbed every single bag of M&M's off the rack behind me. I threw all of them on her conveyor belt. "Here, count and organize these for me. Don't leave your register until you're done. Better yet, don't talk to me until you're done." She chirped in excitement and got to work. I made a mental note to tell Gary there was possibly a new meat selection for tomorrow outside, then headed towards the office. I needed to call the owner and let him know we need to hire another cashier. 7:14 p.m. After I had gotten off the phone with the owners, I was doing a sweep around the store to see if there was anything that needed to be restocked or reorganized. I stopped at one aisle when I saw a woman kneeling on the floor with her back facing me. "Can I help you with anything, ma'am?" I asked her. Honestly, there were few things that scared me anymore, thanks to Charlie's, but something about this woman made the hairs on my arms stand up. I stared at the back of her head for a few moments, noticing how her hair was matted into one giant strand of twigs, dirt, and whatever else was hidden in that mess. She could have had a dead animal in there for all I knew, which would help explain the horrible stench that was coming from her. I took a couple steps toward her. Suddenly, I heard a loud snapping noise, like she had broken her neck, and her head slowly started to turn towards me. I stopped moving whenever she was facing me, as if she was an owl, and I finally got a look at her face. Or, really, what was left of her face. She had horrible scars all over her face, some healed and some still open and clearly infected, dripping blood and pus onto the tiles. The whites of her eyes were the only thing that showed, and they looked milky. Even though I couldn't see her actual eyeballs, I could tell she was looking me in the eye. Her jaw looked broken and hung loosely, letting some weird black tar-looking liquid drip onto the linoleum tiles, mixing with the blood and pus. She tilted her head back and forth, I'm assuming to crack her neck, but it strangely ended up sounding like a creaking door you would hear in a haunted house. Honestly, the fear that I felt right then made me just want to turn away and pretend I had never seen that woman. But I knew the owners wouldn't like that. The thought of upsetting them scared me more than this woman did. So I stayed and tried to offer help. However, I have this bad habit of making jokes whenever something makes me feel tense or scares me. So when I heard the god-awful creaking noise coming from this woman, my immediate response was, "If it's WD-40 you're looking for, we have that over on aisle 10. Clearly, that was not the product she was looking for, though, because whenever I recommended it, she started screeching at the top of her lungs. I don't know why, but I panicked and started screaming back. Then, whenever she stood up, I grabbed a broom that was leaning up against the shelves and pointed at her as a makeshift sword. This immediately made her start cackling, which caused her to choke on the black tar coming out of her mouth. She waited until she stopped coughing, and then grabbed her head and twisted it back to its normal position. Then she turned to face me. She slapped the broom out of my hand and it flew into the shelves, causing an avalanche of canned vegetables to drop to the floor.
"Stupid boy. Do you really think you could defeat me with a broom? What are you gonna do? Sweep me to death?"
She cackled once more, and then took a step towards me. I took a step back and said, "I don't know, maybe." I grabbed a couple cans of beans off the shelves, ready to toss them at her if provoked.
"Relax, child. I'm only the messenger. I wish more than anything that I could rip your fingernails off one by one to make a delicious snack. But the father said you are not to be touched. Yet."
She grinned at me with rotting teeth that looked sharp, and then softly waved one hand upwards, causing the two cans in my hand to launch from my hands and into the ceiling. They exploded upon impact and showered beans and bean juice into the aisle we occupied, and the surrounding aisles. I heard a customer mutter a confused, "What the hell?" in the next aisle over. "Who's the father?" I asked nervously. She cackled again, swiping beans off her shoulder.
"Oh, you haven't heard? He's coming back, and he will rule this world with an iron fist, bathing everything in a beautiful, fiery blaze of despair and agony. He will rid this pitiful planet of every single wretched human and monster, including you and everyone else in this portal to hell." I was going to ask her what she meant by portal to hell, but I let her continue her speech instead, tears forming in her eyes as she did. I didn't want to be rude in case she decided she really did want to rip off my fingernails. "If you think you felt fear before, you're in for a hell of a ride, silly boy. He will torture you in ways you could never imagine. Ripping off your eyelids, sewing them back on, ripping open your abdomen, and making you feast on your entrails, while they're still attached to you, chopping off your tongue and shoving it into holes you didn't even know you had. The possibilities are endless. And since this is a portal after all, just expect us to be here a lot, preparing for his return.
She finished her speech with a little excited applause. I'm guessing at whoever this father guy was. Since I finally had the chance to speak, I asked, "Are you talking about the devil? And what do you mean by portal to hell?" She looked at me like I had asked the dumbest question she had ever heard in her life. If she even was still alive. I couldn't really tell.
The Father is the most powerful being in the world, and his name is Zuberin. Not the stupid devil character everyone is always talking on and on and on about. And how did you not know this was a portal to hell? Did you honestly think that all the weird stuff that happens here is normal? Are humans really that stupid?
Well, speak of the devil, or is it the Father? Cheryl chose this very moment to walk up to us. She paused at the end of the aisle and stared at us, and we stared back as well. "Is it Halloween?" she asked while staring at the woman. "No, Cheryl." I rolled my eyes, but then realized she might be able to help me. "Actually though, Cheryl, while you're here, do you think you could get me a bottle of water? Kinda parched." "Sure," she chirped happily as she walked off to complete the request. I turned back towards the lady just a second before she waved her hand and slammed me into the shelves to the left of us.
Do you really think I'm as stupid as you humans?
She walked towards me and got right in my face. Her breath made my eyes water with how pungent it was.
Did you really think a trick like holy water would be able to defeat a disciple of Zuberin?
She put one of her hands around my neck and started to choke me.
If you weren't going to be used as one of the Father's pawns, I'd kill you right this instant for trying something like that.
She started to speak to me in what I assumed was angry Latin, and I began to see stars. I tried not to look into her eyes, but I was unable to look away or close mine because of some unknown force. In her eyes, I saw every single scenario of torture she wanted to act out on me. It was like seeing your life flash before your eyes, but the exact opposite. Right when I felt like I was on the verge of passing out, she let go and I dropped to the floor, coughing so hard I thought my lungs were about to pop. I was too scared to look up towards her, but I could feel her staring daggers down at me as she said,
"I'll be back, and I'm bringing some friends with me."
And with that, she walked away, and I stayed on the floor, trying to gather my thoughts and catch my breath. I looked up when Cheryl appeared in front of me, struggling to carry 10 different water bottles. "I didn't know which brand you liked, so I got them all," she said, and then she dropped every single one of them onto my legs. Oops. 9:07 p.m. It is actually after hours at Charlie's now. I've just finished locking up the place, and I'm currently sitting in my car. I can see the Wendigos' red eyes staring at me from inside one of the plastic doghouses we have displayed for sale out front. Maybe if I got him a bed and some chew toys, he'd be less inclined to chew on my workers. That's the third cashier we've lost in 6 months. And it was a shame, too. I just finished training that one. Maybe I should start training them on how to defend yourself against Wendigo attacks. And maybe I should train them for the possible end of the world. Who knows? I don't really know who or what this Zuberin guy is, but I told the owners about what happened. They just kind of laughed at me and then hung up the phone, so I'm not really sure what to do. I guess we'll just have to wait until the lady and her friends come back. I just realized the scary lady never told me her name. I think I'll call her Deborah. She seems like a Deborah. Anyways, this concludes a normal day at Charlie's. It was one of my friend's ideas to write this little diary of events, after I told him how hectic it is working here. I don't think he believes 100% of the stories I tell him, but maybe you guys will. I know for sure he won't believe today's events, so please, tell me you guys do. Writing this has helped me relieve some of the stress of managing this place. You guys taking me seriously would also be a big help. If you do, I might continue writing these. Working here definitely has helped me realize that humans aren't the only monsters in the world. So stay safe out there, guys. And make sure you avoid any weird ladies that look like they are named Deborah. 7:03 a.m. I unlocked the doors and walked in, ready for another day at Charlie's. "I'm done, boss." I looked around, confused for a minute, until I turned the lights on and saw a mountain of M&Ms overtaking the space in front of the cash registers, with Cheryl's head peeking out at the top. "Cheryl, what the hell are you doing?" "You told me not to leave or talk to you until I finished counting the M&Ms. It's kind of hard with the lights off, but I did it." "Have you been here all night?" "Yes. There's 109,225 M&Ms in the store. 23,402 red ones. 17,000 and... Yeah, good job. Can you, clean these all up now? And, order more, please?" "Oh, okay. I might take a minute getting down. I've already gotten lost like 3 times in here," she said while giggling at herself. "Okay, well, take your time," I replied, confused at how you can get lost in M&Ms. Suddenly, a muffled scream came from the pile of M&Ms. We both turned toward it, and then heard another scream come from inside. Clearly a woman. "Cheryl, who the hell is in the M&Ms?" I tried to sound concerned, but aggravation took over the tone of my voice. She walked over, reached in, and pulled a woman's head out of the colorful mountain. "Help me, he's coming for me." "Aw, it's okay, honey. You're safe here." Cheryl continued pulling the woman out of the mountain by her hair and towards us. She stopped pulling whenever she realized the girl was nothing more than a head. "Oh no, you lost your body. It's okay though. I got lost in there too. Do you want me to help you find it?" The only good thing I've noticed about Cheryl is that she seems unable to realize just how scary some situations can be. I think it's the reason the owners hired her, because I know for sure it wasn't because of her work ethic or brains. He's coming for all of us," the woman screamed again. Tears of blood started to fall from her eyes and drip onto the floor. "It's okay, hon. Here, have some M&Ms. They always help me feel better." Cheryl grabbed a handful of M&Ms and started to force-feed the woman. She gave up when she realized the woman didn't exactly have a stomach for them to go to, or even an esophagus for them to go through, so they just fell straight onto the floor, into the puddle of blood tears. "Who are you talking about? Who's coming?" I asked her. "Zuberin!" the woman shrieked, and the lights flickered as if they were as scared as she was. "See? His power is increasing. Soon he'll be unstoppable." Honestly, today already wasn't turning out like the day I had prepared for in my head, and that was saying a lot for Charlie's. I was not feeling it at all. I think that helps explain why my response to hearing Zuberin's name was to grab the woman's head from Cheryl, walk outside to the Wendigo doghouse, and chuck it inside. The woman started screaming bloody murder the second the sliding glass doors closed, but I ignored it and the sad look Cheryl was giving me. "Oh, and can you mop up that blood too, please?" "Thanks," I asked her as I made my way to the office to prepare to open. 12 p.m.
"Good afternoon, and thanks for shopping with us at Charlie's,"
I said while holding the strangely sticky microphone in my hand. I silently prayed that Cheryl hadn't spilt chocolate syrup on it again.
"If you haven't made your way over to the deli yet, head over there and let Gary hook you up with some of our daily deals on whatever meat selection you like. Today's special just came in yesterday, so you know it's fresh."
Gary told me he had to fight off the Wendigo for that special meat. He mentioned something about preparing it for Gabe's family to send them our best wishes, but I quickly shut that down.
"We also have wooden crosses for sale, for whatever you may need. Church praise, crucifixion, exorcisms."
I glanced at the new cashier, Lacey, that the owners had hired. I noticed her giving me a very confused stare, and I had to stop myself from accidentally chuckling into the microphone. She didn't know what she was getting herself into.
"You never know what you'll need until you need it, folks. Also, the bathrooms are finally back in working order, and we're terribly sorry about the inconvenience."
I'd give it about a week until that blood came back. The new cashier was going to love seeing that.
"As always, have a great day, and thank you for shopping with us at Charlie's."
I let go of the microphone and walked towards Lacey. "You have an interesting sense of humor," she said while smirking. I looked at her with a straight face and said, I wasn't joking. I grabbed my clipboard from her and motioned for her to follow me. I expected her to question my difference in humor, but she surprisingly didn't. We walked past the aisles while we talked. Since you're new here, there's a lot you're going to have to get used to. You mean like that weird dog out front? She laughed and said, That thing sounds like Cujo on steroids. Why do his eyes glow red, though? Because it's not a dog, and not a he either, I explained, while feeling grateful that the Wendigo didn't fully show itself, or try to get a taste of Lacey yet. What, is it like a really angry fat cat? She laughed at her joke again, but then awkwardly stopped when she realized I wasn't laughing. Honestly, if I told you what it really was, you wouldn't believe me. So we'll talk about that another time. We're waiting on somebody else to help with that situation anyway. What, animal control? I could tell this question wasn't a joke. Something more serious, and definitely not an animal. Well, does it at least have a name? What if we named it Spot? Maybe that would make it less angry. I stopped at an aisle that wasn't occupied by customers. She looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to acknowledge her joke. But I didn't. Whenever she finally got somewhat used to this place, that's when we could joke about the strangeness of it all. But she didn't even know that it was more than just a joke right now. Did the owners tell you anything about the job before they hired you? Or have you heard anything about this place? I asked her. And I wasn't surprised at all when she shook her head. They didn't warn me or the others either. Now that I had been here so long, they left it up to me to teach new workers how to safely operate this place. Do you believe in the paranormal or anything strange, Lacey? What, like crop circles and chemtrails? I shook my head. Like, demons, werewolves, Wendigos? Oh, I guess. I think my grandma's house is haunted. Why, though? Are you trying to tell me this place is haunted? Right after she asked that question, a customer walked up. The customer in question was a beautiful woman with insanely curly, bright red hair and vivid green eyes. Her face was enough to keep you completely captivated. But if you could look away long enough, you'd see that she was wearing a straitjacket. It took me a moment to even notice it when I first met her. Hello, can either of you please help me with this wretched jacket? Sure, said Lacey, completely clueless as she walked towards the woman to help. I probably should have warned her of what was about to happen, but it was best that she learn herself. I mean, who would just help someone in a straitjacket without asking a few questions first anyways? She clearly had a lot to learn in life, but I think Charlie's would teach her way more than the average person would learn. Anyways, the woman is a repeat customer, which is why I wasn't shocked at all over what ended up happening. Thanks, said the red-haired beauty, just before she grabbed Lacey by the hair and yanked her towards her. She grabbed a knife from the waistband of her pants and placed the sharp edge against Lacey's throat before she said, They're coming for me, and I won't let them take me back. I swear, I'll kill her before they do. No one's coming for you. You're completely safe here, I softly reassured her. I had the lines I told her each time she returned memorized in my head, almost like reading a script. I just hoped Lacey wouldn't try anything, because I did not know how things would go down if she did. She didn't look as scared as I thought she would be over this predicament, which would have been a good sign if she didn't look kind of amused, like she wanted the woman to try to hurt her. Mora, no one is coming for you, I reiterated. You've been dead for 30 years. You don't have to worry about them or escaping anymore. She blinked her big, green eyes at me in disbelief. What? That can't be. How do you know my name? Are you one of them? It can be, because it is, Mora. And I know this because you come here almost every week and do the exact same thing, I said, taking the opportunity to discreetly press the button on my walkie-talkie in an attempt to alert Gary that I needed assistance. No, you're lying. You're trying to make me feel like I really am crazy. I'm not. I'm not, I tell you. She tightened her hand around the knife and accidentally nicked Lacey a bit, causing a small drop of blood to escape from her neck. I saw Lacey wince, but I think it was because she was finally feeling a tinge of fear rather than from the pain. Oh, you are. You're also dead, though, so I don't think how crazy you are really matters anymore. Tell me, do you remember anything before the asylum? She stood there and pondered for a bit. scanning her brain for any fraction of memory she could remember. But I knew nothing would come up. It never did. She decided to completely ignore my question instead, and did exactly what I was really hoping she wouldn't do.
How can I be dead when I don't even feel dead? I'll show you I'm not dead.
Just a split second before Gary came up behind her to try to subdue her, Mora took the knife and slit her wrists. She immediately started screaming when no blood came out, and she dropped the knife to the floor, followed by her knees.
I can't be dead. No. No.
Gary took advantage of the opportunity and wrapped a rope around her hands, while I slowly swooped down and grabbed the knife along with Lacey's wrist, jerking her behind me. It's okay, Mora. At least you're safe now. I always felt bad for her. She truly was a nice woman, along with drop-dead gorgeous. The story of her death was a truly gruesome one, so I usually lied about it to her when she asked. She looked up at me, her jade eyes full of tears, and asked,
Did I die in that hellhole?
No, you escaped before you died. That wasn't technically a lie, but not 100% the truth either. Besides shaking a bit, Lacey still seemed mostly calm. She kept staring at Mora in disbelief and even amazement. Gary was about to bring Mora up front to the office, but Lacey motioned for him to wait. She grabbed one of Mora's arms and turned it over to look at the scars, lightly touching one with her fingers. Mora didn't even flinch or show any signs of feeling pain. Can you feel that? She asked Mora, and Mora responded by shaking her head, tears falling from her eyes and onto the tiled floor. Lacey stared down at the scars for just a second more, before wrapping Mora up in her arms. It's okay to be confused and scared, but you're safe now. You don't have any reason to be scared anymore. They can't hurt you. She squeezed Mora tighter as she said this, holding her head to her stomach while brushing the tear-covered curls that were stuck to her cheeks out of the way. Mora let go of Lacey and looked at me while asking, How can I cry, but I can't bleed? I shrugged and answered honestly, I don't know. Mora didn't really seem satisfied with my answer, but she could tell I had nothing more to say. She silently hugged Lacey again without asking any more questions. Lacey waited until Mora stopped crying before she let Gary bring her up front. After they had left, I wanted to make sure Lacey was okay. Honestly, I would understand if you needed to quit after that experience. No one has ever had something that scary happen to them in their first day. She rarely ever goes through with that self-harm scenario, so I'm sorry for not better preparing you for that. She caught me off guard because she started laughing. Are you kidding me? That's the biggest rush I've ever felt in my life. I loved it. She paused and frowned for a second. I just hope Mora will be okay. Maybe she would fit in here after all. 3:54 p.m. I had forgotten that the local blood bank asked to park their van they use for donations in our parking lot today, and we almost always get a rush after that. The Bloodmobile attracts a lot of special guests who like to buy the blood, and while I know that doesn't sound very legal, the owners like the business that it creates for us. Something about the blood gives the buyers a high that also makes them have the munchies, so we always get crazy busy whenever donations start. After the rush calmed down, I brought Lacey into the office to discuss the day's events, and left Cheryl to man the registers. So, who is, or was, Mora? She asked as she played with Mora's rope, tangling it in her fingers. Every time Mora left, she always randomly disappeared. 1 minute she'd be sitting in the office talking to you. Then you turn your back for a split second, and turn back, and she's vanished. No signs of her having been there besides the rope we used to subdue her. We keep the rope for every time she comes back, because we know that basically the same events would happen each time. And there had been many occasions where we trusted her and assumed she had calmed down, only to have another hostage with a sharp object at their throats. I sighed and sat across the table from her. Mora was a patient who escaped from an asylum in the 90s. And whenever she escaped, she came here and took a hostage, saying she would kill the person if they made her go back to the asylum. So the cops ended up swarming the place. She died when they shot her in the back of the head. Was the hostage okay? She looked completely intrigued with Mora's story. I honestly was shocked that she was so accepting of what she had witnessed, considering the existence of ghosts is something heavily debated around the world. I guess if you see a woman literally attempt to kill herself in front of you, and not even bleed a single drop of blood, you don't have enough evidence to dispute what you saw with your own two eyes. Oh, yeah, she released the girl. She never intends to hurt the hostage she takes, I explained, watching her tie the rope into a bow while she listened. She's just scared because she thinks she has to go back to the asylum. Well, why was she in there? Paranoid schizophrenia? Oh, she said with a look of sadness on her face. She unknotted the bow and knotted it again, taking a moment to think. Then she asked, "That wasn't even the weirdest thing to happen at this place, was it?" She looked up at me as I responded by shaking my head and saying, "Not even close." She thought for a moment again and then asked, "What is Spot?" Spot is a Wendigo, and I don't think it would like the name Spot." A Wendigo? Like from Native American folklore? This was the first time I'd seen full-blown disbelief on Lacey's face since she got here. It changed when she saw how serious I was. "That would be it, yeah. We're working on getting someone hired to handle the problem." "You're gonna kill it?" She sounded disappointed when she asked this. "Well, yeah. He ate the last cashier. That's why they hired you." "Well, maybe I can make him friendly. I did name him after all." "It's a Wendigo, not a feral animal. And I told you it wouldn't like that name," I said, almost laughing. "When I came in here, he was literally playing with a squeaky toy. I could hear it from inside the doghouse. Cheryl gave it that because she's Cheryl, and nothing she does ever makes any sense." I rolled my eyes while saying this, very over Cheryl's antics. "Well, maybe he wants to be a pet." "It wants to eat people. And stop calling it he. It's an it." Right after I said this, Gary spoke over my walkie-talkie and asked me to come help him with something. So I excused myself and gave Lacey some papers from the owners to read while I was busy. 8:54 p.m. Since it was so close to closing, I was in the office doing some last-minute paperwork for a fight that broke out in the parking lot between two rival werewolf tribes. The owners like me to document when stuff like that happens, though whether it's just for their pleasure or for actual legal reasons, I'm not sure. Cheryl came in and handed me a piece of paper that she said she found in the bathroom. It had droplets of blood on it, including the words, "We are coming," and a bunch of random symbols under it that I'm assuming is their language. I didn't really think much of the note, but then she told me I should go check out the bathroom. I expected it to have its usual mess of blood, which honestly would be kind of unusual because it normally takes a bit longer to show back up. But when I walked in, it was so much worse. Instead of blood, there was an abundance of black sludge that you had to wade through. Heads floated around in it, each with their eyes and mouths wide open, like they were screaming in terror. And a pyramid of skulls and bones was leaned against one corner. The same language from the note was carved into the tile walls, floor to ceiling, along with images that crudely resembled hieroglyphics, and a few upside-down pentagrams. I tried to walk towards one of the stalls, but it was extremely difficult with the sludge as deep as it was. I stopped and ran back to the doorway of the bathroom whenever I felt something grab my leg. A being formed from the sludge, coming together to create a woman with long, black hair, black eyes, and skin that seemed to barely fit her. Rather than clothes, the sludge covered her and writhed around her body, making her lose skin around her as it did. She looked absolutely disgusting and dirty, and just like what you'd expect a person created from black sludge to look like. She opened her mouth and reached her arm in, completely stretching her jaw way past what a normal human jaw could withstand. What she brought out was a chain with a charm resembling the symbols on the wall, and she began to slowly move towards me with it. I tried to move, but the same invisible force that Deborah had used seemed to take over my body once again. She stopped just before me and raised the charm to my forehead. She placed it on my skin lightly, and then more forcefully once I began to feel it burning. I tried to scream, but the force had taken away my ability to even move my lips. She stared into my eyes, and rather than seeing torturous images, I felt a feeling of despair and hopelessness. Deborah elicited fear, but this woman made you want to beg to be dead. I felt like her eyes were slowly sucking the soul out of me. I sat there in silent pain until, after what felt like an eternity, she removed the charm. She placed it back into her mouth and swallowed it. Then, as slowly as she came toward me, she backed away and melted into the sludge again. I felt whatever paralysis the force had created leave my body, but then I became paralyzed with fear to move within the sludge, afraid she'd come back. I calmed down when Cheryl came up behind me. "You have one of those little doodles on your forehead," she said, and I could actually hear fear in her voice. I got brave enough to walk towards one of the bathroom mirrors to look at myself. The symbol burned into my forehead resembled an upside-down teardrop, with a lightning bolt through it. I looked around at the symbols on the wall to see if any matched the one now on me, but none of them matched. Whenever I turned back towards the mirror, the symbols on the wall above the mirror had changed to the words, "You have been marked by him." But whenever I blinked, they had morphed back into the strange symbols. I looked back at Cheryl and asked, "Did you see that too?" She responded by nodding, and I realized this is the least she had ever spoken since starting at Charlie's. Things were getting strange at Charlie's, but it was a strange unlike any that we had ever seen. 9:32 p.m. I just finished locking up the store. I asked Gary to clean the bathroom up for us, and he swore he didn't see any strange women floating around in the sludge. Lacey took pictures of the symbols in the bathroom, and the one on my forehead before she left, and told us she was going to try and research them tonight. Cheryl stayed quiet besides telling us goodbye before she left. I tried to explain to the owners how concerned I was about something bad happening soon, but they still didn't take it seriously. They told me they had already had 5 different instances of people or things claiming the end of the world was coming. I honestly have no idea how to feel about what's going on, but I do know I'm scared. Whatever that woman did to me earlier has left me feeling incredibly off. Like she actually did take a piece of my soul with me when she left. She didn't feel evil like Deborah, however. The only thing that comes to mind whenever I think of her are feelings of sadness and despair and wanting things to end. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm honestly scared. I'll keep you guys updated if anything else happens. Good luck out there. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/JordanGroupHorror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward. And if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you, which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.